Hello and welcome to the NEWSPASTE Podcast with me, your host, Johnny Vedmore. And it's been a little bit of time since I've had the old traditional podcast. Of course, those who know I've been away. I went into the clouds of the TNT world and I became the front man of the Johnny Vedmore show and managed to have a really great time, speak with loads of great people. An amazing audience, amazing guests, amazing people working for the station, loads of them. And one of them is here today. So we're going to talk about loads of stuff. We're not just going to talk about the TNT ride. We talk about loads of different things. But this is the man, Ruckus, Adam Clark. He's a brilliant guy. The first time that I met Ruckus, he become my producer, and I have to be honest, at that stage I didn't really know what a producer was. So I didn't even have a clue what that meant. And then I went on this journey, and then you realize whenever you go on a journey like that where there's loads of stuff going on all the time, loads of flipping and changing, the people you're around, the people who you're close to, the people that you love, and the people that you cherish, because we support each other in loads of different ways. And yeah, I felt extremely supported by this man. And so I'm so happy now to get the NEWSPASTE podcast back on the roll, and for the first guest to be Ruckus. Ruckus, how are you today? Are you all right?
I am well, Johnny. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. This is humongous. This means a lot to me. I appreciate it. And wow, what a ride. You mentioned the TNT ride. That was quite a ride, a bit of a shorter ride for you than it was for me, but just as impactful, I am sure. Wow. But yes, what a ride. So I'm very sad to see that it has at least temporarily halted. Perhaps it's just needing a quick oil change before it gets back on the road. One of those pit stops. We'll see what happens. But yeah, again, thank you for having me here. This is tremendous right here. Going back to doing what you do. I'm going to be going back to doing what I used to do. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. But again, thank you so much for having me, Johnny. I appreciate it.
Man, it's a complete pleasure, because you're someone who you've had a lot of hours now on live radio, out there. I not only live radio, I mean TNT. Of course, I always found it really hard to explain to people, because I'd be like, "Oh, I'm on TNT radio," but it's actually not the radio. It's just like a news channel, but it's not got Ofcom regulations, so we got like wild cowboy hats on and lassos. And we're going. It truly is like Wild West territory in the news front. And you have, when did you actually first get onto TNT? What was the very primordial ooze like for you?
It was pretty wild. It was 2 years ago, so it was 2022. It was about a week before my birthday, and I was invited to be a guest on Joseph Arthur's show. Joseph Arthur, that's right, the famous musician who got canceled for saying some controversial things during the COVID era. So yeah, he got canceled because he thought it wasn't a good idea to be giving experimental mRNA gene jabs to children. How dare you? So he had record contracts thrown out the window. He had albums that were about to be released, and they said, no, forget about it. So he was a really good guy. Yeah, I was invited to be a guest. This is all thanks to, of course, because I am involved with alternate current radio, and TNT had headhunted, I guess, or managed to lasso in one Patrick Henningsen, and then not long thereafter, my good friend Brian McLean, aka Hesher, who's the owner of alternate current radio, and through them, they said, "Hey, yeah, this guy, yada yada yada." Next thing I know, I'm on this guy's show. And I show up, and he picks up his guitar, and to introduce me, he sings a song about me. So right out of the gate, it was quite an eclectic experience, I tell you. And it was just about a week after that. It was pretty much on my birthday. I got a phone call from Mike Ryan, and he offered me a job, and I just couldn't believe it. The job was as Joseph Arthur's co-host, so that was exciting. You mentioned this idea, like it's hard to explain what TNT is. Boy, howdy, because I'm coming at a point where like I have people in my life who I'm still trying to explain to them what a podcast is. Yes, those people exist. They still don't understand what a podcast is. And those people, usually I try to explain it to them. Oh, remember old talk radio? And they get it. They get old talk radio, but they don't understand podcasts. And then a strange flippening happened, Johnny, throughout my experience, in particular when TNT switched to the video thing, but it was before then as well. There were a lot of people who confused TNT, which was talk radio, with podcasting. And that caused a lot of various and humorous, I don't know what you would call them, conflicts along the way, especially again when we switched to video because Mike Ryan, the owner of the station, and his companion Jenny Squires, they had a vision for what TNT radio was and what TNT video was going to look like when it switched to TNT.news. And that was just very difficult for all these old school podcaster types to wrap their head around. And the folks who were already on board, who were old school talk radio folks, couldn't wrap their head around the video part. So it just got really fun and interesting to be there for that last year where we were just doing video. I mean, we were doing that for probably 3 months, Johnny, before we went actual live to the public. So there was a lot of like dress rehearsals going on. So like a lot of those audio episodes in the last 3 months before we went to video, we were doing video, but it was just for us. It wasn't recorded. Maybe there's recordings of those out there somewhere. I hope not, because that was pretty cringy. That was when, like, since we knew the public couldn't see us, we didn't care what we looked like. So, we had our messy hair and our hats and stuff, but pretty soon we had to get used to dressing up and doing our hair and makeup and getting ready for the big reveal when we finally went to video. And man, I don't know how they pulled it off, but they did. And I was very proud to be a part of it along the way. And then, I switched from being a co-host for Joseph Arthur to eventually doing news segments where I would come and present a news program to various shows. And then eventually they offered me the job of a producer. And wow, throughout my career there, I touched so many shows in so many different ways on so many different levels. And you said you didn't know what it meant to be a producer. There were many times through me being a producer, I didn't know what it meant to be a producer either, Johnny. But just very much like, how you had full editorial control to what you were allowed to say on there. Us producers pretty much also had full editorial control as to what the program was going to look like with the guests and the news and all that kind of stuff. But we all kind of had an idea that it needed to look and sound good. So there was no phone calls from the bosses saying, "Oh, don't ever book this guest again because this guest said or did such and such a thing." However, there were a few times where they said, "Hey, please, if you're going to have this guest on again, can you make sure they clean their room and there's not dirty underwear hanging on the wall behind them?" So we got that kind of thing going all the time. And then, of course, eventually we had to just not, openly invite people who refused to go on camera because it just didn't look good to just sit there looking at a phone symbol for 30 minutes straight. So that did cause a little bit of conflict behind the scene with some people. But we weren't like trying to censor anybody. We had a strong vision for what it needed to look and sound like. That's also a
I
full
think people,
confession
yeah.
there. Yeah, it was good times though.
I'm surprised to hear that you and Mike Ryan wear makeup. I didn't realize that happened, but wow.
I cannot speak for Mike Ryan, but I will confess that I have occasionally had to break out a little bit of makeup to cover blemishes on my face.
Mm.
Because, I've got a face for radio. It was an old joke I used to make all the time because people used to tell me, "Hey, you got a good voice for radio," many, many years ago. And then I'd heard about that old-fashioned joke, so I said it all the time. "Oh, no, I got a face for radio, yada, yada." So, yeah, and then sure enough, I had to actually show my face for radio, which was weird.
You
Still
look
can't wrap my head
fine.
around that
You
one.
look good. You look good. You have your own style completely. And it's funny when you're on a screen that's really personal and up close. I mean, anybody who goes out live, who streams, who does any type of journalism like that where you can't necessarily add a filter or whatever, which I don't really enjoy doing. Like they know the pain. They know the pain. You have to like give away part of that ego that you've got because you got to look at yourself all the time, and you're like, oh man, I'm like that anyway. I got a big beardy face with a silly smile and stuff. I know what it's like. I know what it's like. But yeah, you did good. You did good. You did good. It does make a lot more sense that people who don't like make the effort, that's a hard bit. I think that's a hard I think there needs to be like a thought about how I would like what you were saying now, like people to create platforms that cover all genres that are currently available. So which have like can incorporate podcast style within show format, can incorporate shorter, much shorter, quicker pieces of information as well that can be cut up or will go straight out on certain platforms that like the short form. I'd love to see a lot more of that. Do you think that this is all just like a bit of an evolution where we're mashing it all together at the moment?
Well, I know each of us independently have been doing that all along our journeys up until TNT, during and now afterwards. So I don't know exactly what TNT's plans are. I can't even say 100% certain if they come back together that I might be involved. Who knows what the future holds, Johnny? I know that I'm personally I got bit by the content creator bug again. You know the one when you're creative and you're doing your thing and you start getting into it, like you don't want to stop. That's how I got yesterday. I mean, I literally was working on my new podcast all day yesterday, and I didn't even stop to think about what I was doing, what time it is, what's happening. I didn't even eat, and I finally had to force myself to eat something and go to bed at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning my time. But I'm like, I'm excited about doing this again. So, and I'm also excited about the work that I've been doing for many years with alternate current radio, which I believe is one of those types of platform that has already had that type of vision. We have so many different types of people and different podcasts. Each one is different, and they're not all video. They're not all audio only. We have some hardcore geopolitics stuff. We got some light and loose roundtable conversations. We've got the news kind of stuff coming from this guy here. We've got a deep dive researcher into secret societies, and then we have probably the most unique podcast you'll ever hear in your life. So there's so many different offerings there. But I believe that's where the future is at, being able to diversify, not diversity, but diversify. There's a huge difference there. They sound similar, but you definitely want to diversify, kind of like your investments. So I think it's great to have content. I also think it's great to have content that's produced on a daily basis. And I'm going to say something mildly critical of today's news talk, because again, I understand what they were going for. It is quite difficult for a person to consume 24 hours a day of somebody's content. So as
Mm.
great as TNT was and as awesome of the hosts they had, they had a moment where there was 24 hours, at least every once in a while,
It's
of brand new
crazy.
unique content, and it was all so damn good that you wanted to hear it all. And next thing you know, you just wasted your day. You didn't go to work. You forgot to eat. So like, I think there needs to be, I think less is more in some instances. So I think for a 24-hour news station, if you're going to be that damn good as they were, maybe roll it back a little bit to maybe like just 18 hours or something, because it's too much. It's way too much for
I,
people to
I,
consume.
Agreed,
That's just my
agreed.
thing. Yeah.
Like in almost every single conversation that I was seeing have on there, it was like if you'd have 10 conversations, one of them might be mediocre, nine of them spot on, interesting, intriguing, will bring you something maybe new, maybe another view, and maybe a more nuanced view. I always found is like, and it was just constant. So I couldn't even take in the amount. But I would say something positive, and again from like content creator mindset. I found that really like it was really challenging to go out and write, especially when you weren't doing the news anymore, write 1,500 words per monologue, loads of questions, research all of the guests just in one day. That was four guests, really like boom, 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 gonna kind of mix in whatever's going on. Lots going on in the chat. I always found the chat centered me. That was a really nice sort of like a way to keep an eye on everything, and everything else is kind of peripheral, and then it goes more naturally, I found. But what positive aspect it has now is that I want to post up a load of content. I have got with so many interviews, full interviews, that people would have to watch the entire show to consume. And now I can split them up and put them out there. And that has given me such a mass of content. It took away like a certain part of the life because you're just like concentrating and concentrating and working. And it was all worth it. Um, there wasn't a point where it allowed me to be able to like harness different things. So that sort of like overload work mode can be really good if you're in that stage of your career. But let's go back because we've rushed on really far there. And how does Ruckus get started in any of this? When baby Ruckus was hanging around, what was baby Ruckus like? Did he have the signature glasses and Hawaiian shirt on, and was he dreaming of being a journalist one day?
Not exactly. I definitely did not anticipate this as a career whatsoever. In a way, when I was a very young Ruckus, when I wasn't Ruckus and I was just Adam, as a small boy, I always thought for some strange reason that I would like to become an author. I was a big, big, big fan of reading, especially from at least age 9 on. So solid from 10, 100%. From 10 years on, it's been like a passion. I love to read, and it's anything, but mostly I like cheap fiction kind of crap these days. But anyways, but I like to read. So I'm one of those, face in the book, nerdy kind of guy. I had the big glasses and everything. Luckily, I didn't get too. I wasn't very much bullied or anything. I was in a good place and a good time to be a kid. Things were good here in America and where I was. So that was pretty neat. But the thing is, like at some point when I was very young, I didn't have a very fond memory of it, but I remember doing it. I went to something, and I mean very young. I don't know, probably I'm just gonna guess, probably fourth or fifth grade. We're talking super young. It was some community center or summer school program thing that me and my sister were involved in. I don't know exactly the details, but I do recall that one of the projects that we worked on, and it was during the last day, it was like a week-long conference. It culminated in a presentation that was created by the children. And what my group did is we decided to create a news broadcast as though we were broadcasting the news. I don't know which of the group came up with this idea or whatever, but of all of that thing, the scenario, and there was a camera guy, and we were going to report the news. The person who was the one sitting at the desk reporting the news was yours truly. Very, very interesting because, again, I was the shy, nerdy guy with the glasses. They were far more attractive and popular, athletic kids. I was not that kid. So it's very strange when I look back, knowing what I do now, to think, hey, man, I guess I kind of did that at least once when I was a very young lad. But again, I did want to be a writer. So eventually throughout my early adult life, when I got involved with news and thinking about some conspiracy theory kind of stuff and doing a lot of reading and researching into journals and articles, I thought, hey, maybe I want to be a journalist. Maybe I want to write articles. Maybe I want to be, what's this new thing what are they called? Bloggers. That was fairly new at the time when I was getting serious about thinking about this. And I don't know what happened. I was just busy with work because I was very much throughout most of my life involved with marketing and business, and that is what my career has been all the way up until this has been marketing and business. So it's a far cry from what I used to do for a living, but not really because it's all kind of related. Because when you're involved in media and broadcasting, there is a lot of marketing and business involved. There's just that creative element, that spark that comes from within that I think can't necessarily be taught, but can be recognized and can be pulled out and encouraged, nudged, etc. And I think you have that spark. I think I have that spark, that creative, whatever it is. Musicians have this, artists as well, etc. Poets, of course, writers, and all of that stuff. But I got introduced to Alex Jones of all people, and
Dun
I was
dun
like, yeah,
dun.
and everything changed, and I was consuming that kind of content for quite a while, for about a year, and I ran across some online rinky-dink network from some dude. I'm not going to name the guy. I always say he shall not be named. But I was an
Jeffrey Epstein.
interactive person, right? No, yeah. We'll just call him Jeffrey Epstein. So Jeffrey Epstein had a podcast, and he had a website for his podcast, and he had
That would be
something that I,
brilliant. That would be
yeah,
brilliant.
he had something that I had never ever seen before in my entire life,
Mhm.
Johnny, and I was enamored from the get-go. It was a little online interactive chat. This is a true
Mm,
story.
mm,
And I was watching. There were people watching and listening to this show, just like I'm watching and listening to the show. But these are real people, and they're talking. And I
mhm.
saw that for a couple days, and I said, I think I want to do this too. But in order to do that, you have to pick like a username. So I was like, well, what the heck? I'm not going to use my real name. Oh my God, I don't want anyone to know who I'm in. The government might come for me and lock me in a FEMA camp. I saw Alex Jones. So what am I going to call myself? Quick. I know. I'll call myself Ruckus. Why? Well, I had a cat named Ruckus, a big Maine Coon. I miss that cat. Rest in
Oh,
peace,
Maine
Ruckus.
Coons.
And I had used that cat's name before when I signed up for like a video game thing. I think it was PlayStation, the PlayStation Network. You have to have a username. And again, you can't use your real name. So I was like, I need to pick a name. So I used my cat's name. So I was Ruckus on the PlayStation Network. So I decided to go by Ruckus when I logged into this chat room. And I started interacting with the people in the chat the same way your people in your chat interact with you.
Mhm.
And before too long, I decided I had a wild hair up my ass after doing this for about a month, and the dude who did the
Is
podcast,
that an
Jeffrey Epstein.
expression? Is that an
Yes, he.
expression? A wild hair up my ass.
Yes, you've not heard that. Yeah,
I've
just in
not
case
know.
you're like, I don't know why I did it. I just had no reason whatsoever.
Uh,
Wild hair up the
yeah,
ass is
okay,
American
well,
thing.
it's in there. It's in there now. Well, not the hair, but in my head. Go
Okay,
on.
good. Yeah, you don't want it in your ass, my friend. So, anyways, so I was talking and chatting, and the guy who was doing the show, Jeffrey Epstein, of course, it was his podcast. He would actually call out, "Oh yeah, Ruckus just said something really interesting in the chat," and he would read out what I said on the chat, and I was like, that felt really good. I felt like now I was participating in the program. I was no longer just a viewer or just a listener. I was now part of the show, and I liked it. So I decided I wanted to do my own show, and I became a regular caller to the Jeffrey Epstein podcast, or just calling it that. And I would speak to Jeffrey all the time, and he would, it's Ruckus, and he would like, Ruckus is here, and I would do these great big Ruckus rant. I would do these big old rants, and people would love it, and you could see them clapping in the chat, and they loved me, and I was like, this is fun. I'm enjoying just being me and getting it off my chest, and I felt empowered because no one knows I was really Adam Clark. I'm just some guy, Ruckus. No one knows who the hell I am. I could say anything. I'm safe. The government's not going to come at me. Boy, was I wrong about that. Anyway, but maybe Jeffrey Epstein was working for the government. Who knows? Um,
Yeah.
so I
Okay, go
called
on.
in and I said, Jeffrey, I tell you what, you have motivated me. I'm going to start my own podcast. I'm going to call it, I don't know what it's going to be called, but I eventually did one, and it was called the Ruckus Room Reality Radio. And it was hardly a podcast. It was really more of me having conversations with people and me figuring out how to record bits and pieces of our conversation and then putting it together and making it sound like it was like a podcast.
Yeah.
And I did it kind of like Pulp Fiction style. And I would like, there were parts from the end that I would put in the beginning. There was all these weird noises that I would put in there that eventually turned into that something that is now traditional to all of my programming, including my new one. It's the sound of like a radio static dial changing.
Mhm.
So when that would happen on my program, next thing you know, it's a hard cut to like another part of an audio from a whole nother conversation in a whole nother place and different people. And then it would cut back to another thing. And then maybe like an audio from a movie clip, and then maybe a little bit of music. And I did that. And next thing I know, I had like a 2 hour long podcast. That's how I would do it. So I would do episodes just like that. And it was very
So
fun,
clever. I
very
wish I had
interesting.
known you all the way back then so I could have stolen that and started off myself doing something like that. That sounds awesome. I might do that now. I might do that now. Right now,
It might
literally,
be
I'm off.
trademarked.
Go on, anyway.
But that's how it started. So it's really, it's always amazing to me to hear when somebody like you or even now myself, where we see the people in the chat, and I'm like, you don't understand people. You guys one day could be doing exactly what we're doing. I mean, because that's how I started,
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
literally. So
I can
it's
hear it in my head.
fascinating.
I can hear, hello and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein podcast from Little St. James Island, where we'll be going through all of the different things we've been doing today. Can you imagine a Jeffrey Epstein podcast? That would be it would be insane. Anyway, maybe that's actually, who's that, who's that comedian that does, Dr. Phil and a few others on Kill Tony. Oh, I can't remember his name. I get a feeling it's Alex something. Alex Ray? Is it Adam Ray? Is it Adam Ray? Oh, he should get on that. He should get on the Jeffrey Epstein podcast. I think that would be a complete winner. So you end up you that's I when I was young, I didn't know I wanted to be a writer because I hated English so much, you know. Yeah, lessons dragged me down. So we had so many books in the house. And it's weird. I used to go into books and like I'd read a part of halfway through the middle or something, and then I'd put it down. And we had loads of reference books and historical books, and all of it all led me to do that same sort of thing, pick up little bits of information. And then where you were talking about like that school project where you had to do like a news talk, a newsroom clip. And I had that same sort of thing with like writing about Jack the Ripper and Myra Hindley. And that was just like the moment where it was like I was 12, about 12, I think, me and Brian Rich, and we had done this project. And I'd gone away and I was like just research stuff, and it was just click. That's it. I know what I knew then, and I still hated reading. So I just tried to avoid it as much as I possibly could and went into music instead. But so you came into the point where when did you get into feeling like this was something where you needed to have other people and you needed to be doing it with other people? And when did you meet like people like Henningsen and Hesher? Because they're obviously massively important. Alternate current radio, obviously massively important to your development. How do you get there?
Well, that's very interesting because it was right there at the Jeffrey Epstein podcast. Believe it or not, Jeffrey Epstein himself, in our fictional setting here, folks, actually had discovered Patrick Henningsen. And here's where it gets even crazier. It was the interview that Jeffrey Epstein, the podcaster, did with Patrick Henningsen that inspired me to phone in the next day and say I wanted to do a podcast. There was something about the story of Patrick Henningsen when he explained how he got started as a writer. Something clicked inside me. I felt motivated. There was something very motivating about his personal story, his personal journey to that point where he was at now. And it was big to me because he was featured as like this news break guy. He had his website, he had his journalism stuff that he was doing, but he came onto this network for the Jeffrey Epstein podcast guy and did these special news, not segments like I did, but actual hard hitting. Like, here's a breaking story that I wrote and did the research, and he would report it to everybody. And it was phenomenal stuff. But that was Patrick Henningsen. And it was through his work, through this Jeffrey Epstein podcast guy we also met. I also met Basil Valentine eventually. But inside that little chat room there, where we're hanging out every day with the fine folks that you got in your chat room sometimes there at TNT, right? Were some people with funny looking names. One of them said Hesher, and one of them said Spore. And we became very close friends. So that is how I came to know Hesher, Spore, and Patrick Henningsen, who are three of a very small handful of people who went on to create alternate current radio. And that's how I got involved. So many years after the Jeffrey Epstein podcast, dude was serving some time in jail.
Oh
Anyway,
no! I hope it
yes.
didn't end badly for him.
No, and so unfortunately, it ended badly for somebody else, but I can't say who because then you'll know who the Jeffrey Epstein
I
podcast guy is.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I'm so gonna start the Jeffrey Epstein podcast up again.
Oh, we have to do a
It's,
parody thing. Totally.
100%. Hey, anybody listening here? I've already copyrighted it. I've copyrighted it before this show's gone out. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm getting it. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, so many years passed. They disbanded over there, that podcast network, and Patrick Henningsen went off and started doing his own thing with his website, 21 Wire. But it was this previous network where he had started a brand new radio program not long before that network disappeared, and it was called the Sunday Wire. And he managed to get through a small handful of episodes before things fell apart with that Jeffrey Epstein podcast guy, for good reason. Screw that guy. So Patrick went off to do his own thing, but now Sunday Wire was left in hiatus, and this was, I believe, the push for why Hesher and some people decided to start up alternate current radio because they felt Sunday Wire needed a home. So they did that, and then not long thereafter, Hesher started a show called The Boiler Room, and I became a fan of both those programs. For the longest time, many, many years, I was just a listener. Occasionally, I would pop into their chat room and I would say something to the tune of Ruckus was here. That's all I would say, just so that they know I'm still around, I'm still alive. I did not interact with the chat. I had very good reason to keep a low profile, mostly because of the Jeffrey Epstein podcast guy. So I didn't want to be out there anymore. I was like, I'm never doing a podcast again. No one's ever going to hear my voice again. But I miss my friends and I enjoy what they're doing and I support them all the way. So every once in a while, I pop in and I say, Ruckus was here. And they noticed that. I didn't know that until many years later. But I reconnected with them eventually. They were doing pretty good with their thing. I had a little extra spare time. I thought I could do a new podcast, which might be 5 to 7 minutes long. And it would just be me reading through some fun and interesting news stories, add a quick little humorous, snarky comment, because I'm just good at doing that apparently, and it's my thing. And I'll call it something. What would I call it? Oh, I don't know. Let's call it the Daily Ruckus. Oh, but if I call it the Daily Ruckus, that means I have to do it every day. Screw it. Let's do it. And I did it, and I tried to do it, and that was back in 2014. I did a small handful of them. I sent them to my friend Hesher. I said, "Hey, listen, if you like this, you can put this on your network. It's totally up to you." He loved it. He did. And I only made like 8 of them before I had to stop because I couldn't do it every day. It was too much work while I was working a full-time job. So I disappeared again, Johnny, all the way up until 2019. And you know what was looming around the horizon. And I saw it
Oh,
coming.
oh, oh, I know, I know, I know. Is
What
it
was it?
an extra sort of series of Walking Dead? Are
No.
you sure it
I think
wasn't? Because it
I
looked
think it
like
was
it.
season 3 of Sons of Anarchy or something. And I was like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's it,
right.
man. I
That's
got to
it.
take the
That's
gloves
it.
off. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, I saw people supposedly allegedly dropping dead in China from some mysterious disease. And
Ah,
yeah, I'm a smart
oh.
guy, dude.
Sorry, that was
I
my
knew it was
Chinese
coming.
impression there, but don't tell anyone.
Yeah. And so I was like, wow, I guess I probably need to start talking and doing something. So I brushed off my social media, which I was only using for my businesses. So I was active on social media. I just wasn't using my own accounts. And I was like, hey, I tried to get in there and start dropping some hints and talk to some people that I used to know. And they were like, I don't care what's happening in China. What does that have to do with America? There were people were seriously blowing me off very early on in this. And then, of course, it wasn't long before it became a worldwide thing. And next thing you know, they start talking about we're going to start shutting down the world. So I got ready and I reached out to my friends Hesher and Spore and I helped them build up their Discord server. They had one, but they weren't really using it. They didn't know what to do with it. And I decided to spend some of my spare time getting ready for whatever was coming. I didn't know it was going to be a big deal like it was, but it was. And I was like, let's figure out this Discord thing. My superpower, Johnny, is that I can pretty much figure out how to do anything if I put my heart and my mind to it. So I'd never used Discord before outside of the fact that I knew what it was. It's a way where people who are watching video game streams can get together and chit chat. It's also a place where if you're a neo-Nazi, you get together and hang out with your KKK buddies, with all your Fed buddies who are watching everything that you say and do. Anyways, I didn't know about that till much later. But yes, I started a Discord server. I named it the Ruckus Room Reality Radio, and it was just a playground, a sandbox for me to play around with. How does this work? Would this work for a media network? Lo and behold, I thought this would be great for a media network. I reached out to Hesher. I said, hey, look, man, we've got people talking about shutting down America, yada, yada. Things are happening quick. Have you ever heard of Discord? And he says, are you kidding? I have a Discord. I was just about ready to get in there and see if I can't figure out how to use it. And I said, "Have I got some good news for you?" We had a quick chat, and within 24 to 48 hours later, they had a huge slamming Discord built pretty much from the ground up, thanks to yours truly. And then handed off the keys to them, Hesher and Spore, and it's been a growing community ever since. And not long after that, since I was hanging out with them, I was like, "Hey, I ain't got much to do now that they locked down the world." In about March, I said, "Can I come on the boiler room with you?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure, that would be fun." So I started coming on the boiler room with them. And not long after that, I said, "Hey, you know what? I'm kind of bored twiddling my thumbs here. I was kind of maybe thinking of doing a podcast again." "Oh, you should absolutely do that." I was like, "Oh, sure, I'll sit down and do that." Well, 24 hours later, I had like a 35-minute long episode of the Daily Ruckus. It was no longer a
Mhm.
5 to 7 minute short thing. It was a full on, amazing, wonderful, wow, what a piece of joy that was. That was a lot of work. That was another project that I stayed up all day for, 24 hours straight. But man, I was sweating and I loved it. I loved every bit of it. I made all of my audio pieces that I still use to this day on back then and like when I was working on that. I think the first episode was released in June of 2020. So it's
I
pretty
love
wild.
that. I love
Yeah.
that. And you're getting back on to the Daily Ruckus. So are you going to do it in the same way? And what is the format then?
Well, it's going to be very similar to what it was, except now it's going to be on video. And yeah, I think you've probably not heard my podcast, but people who are familiar with my podcast can probably already recognize that I'm sweating it because if you've heard my podcast, you'd be like, "How the heck do you turn that into a video podcast?" And that is what I've been struggling with, wrapping my brain around. And I finally got it. I finally got something that I'm going to go
Ooh.
out, start with, and then I'll be adding special elements as we go. I will have like a full nice video opener eventually. But in the meantime, I still have my audio opener. I figured out how to work that with some images and some things that I'm doing, some fades, some transitions. And now I just got to figure out how I'm going to do it live because that's the other big thing. As much as I loved doing the Daily Ruckus, it was a labor intensive job because it was pre-recorded and I was just using kind of a crappy microphone at the time when I started doing it. And I didn't know what I was doing as far as an audio engineer standpoint. And I was just using Audacity. So I would just record into it and I sounded
Classic.
like absolute garbage.
Yeah, of
So all
course.
of the magic happened in all of the post editing, adding all of the compression and limiting and tweaking the equalizer and changing the
Yeah.
bass and compressing and limiters and I
Hmm.
would speed up and compress things, and I had to take out all the uhs and ums and all the background noise. And I would read a story and I would fuck something up, and I'd be like, "Oh, now I have to read that over again."
Now
And then
this
when I would
this is
listen
a
back,
place
I'd
where
be like, "Oh my God."
I can be completely in agreement with AI being involved in that part of a process. You know, the nitty-gritty annoying parts of any process. I can fully. I mean, we're not. What we're talking about here is really interesting because it's like not only the evolution of yourself, not only the evolution of Ruckus, of your ability, how you interact with the media. Because really, what you described to me is becoming the type of person who's like, and this is how I can describe you as well, a multi-skilled fix-it man who can for the independent media, for alternative media, where you can go in and fill up and see all of the little joint bits that other people, because I fail on many, without the help of someone whose mind works like yours. I find it very hard to coordinate and decide on what best to do, and there's loads of bits that are missing, so it doesn't even get heard or listened to. You're someone who can get in between those, but at the same time, technology is advancing, and I'm not necessarily afraid of technology. And there's no way it can go back now. That you can't put genies back in bottles is something we've learned all the time. So whatever going on, there is going to be a point where we are going to have to decide on where the end of AI is, where the end of all of these tech dreams should be, to be safe for us, because we're coming up to a danger point. How long do you think that's going to be, and what do you see in the future for like technical? Because what you're describing there is creating a show where you're doing loads of stuff that would be unimaginable on Audacity 10, 15 years ago or something, doing on a program. Is it like, is there a tech sort of media boom going on at the moment? What's going on?
Well, it would appear that way, and I agree with you. It's just that I've already like evolved myself beyond that. I don't need the AI because I've made the decision to just do it live.
Mm.
A machine can't do it live. Well, okay, I take it back. I do. I guess we are moving in a position where technology is so good that I could be sitting here doing a live video, talking and speaking and being recorded with my face and my voice. But what's being broadcast to the person is, say, Elon Musk. And you see Elon Musk saying what I'm saying. You see Elon Musk and you hear Elon Musk, and that could be happening in real time because that's how far
This
the
sounds like the
technology
first
has
episode of the
advanced.
Jeffrey Epstein podcast. Go on.
Oh, hey, now you're on to something. By the way, how do you know this is even me? This could very well
Oh,
be
don't twist the mind with
Elon
this one.
Musk
No, no. Oh my God, you're Elon Muscular
pretending
puppet.
pretending to be Ruckus. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, this is Volodymyr Zelensky.
Oh wow. Oh, that's really dark. Now you've gone really dark. I love today twice people have used Putin as an example of a evil dictator to me to describe things. I'm just like, he's exactly the same as Keir Starmer. There's like not much difference at all between like all of these leaders. They're all heading towards the same globalism, and they're all evil and all doing evil stuff all of the time. Using him as an example suggests that you might still be, there's lots of people who are in that. But anyway, evolution, like where do you see this going? Where is it, you say you wouldn't need that technology because you're doing it live, but what do you think could be in the future so that it could be, I mean, I can't even imagine. I got one of those road systems recently with the like you can program in a load of audio samples and stuff like that. I love the idea of that. How I'm going to use it, I don't know. Probably on the Jeffrey Epstein podcast, to be honest.
Yeah, Hesher was just telling me I need to get a roadcaster, and I said, "Bah, phooey, I'm gonna do workarounds. I'm just gonna jerry rig it," they say. But yeah, I think where this is heading, Johnny, is, and I hate to say this kind of thing, and I'm just gonna use TNT as an example. You and I have provided so much content on that program, video and audio wise. It's no stretch of the imagination that one day somebody could create an artificial intelligence Johnny Vedmore
No, it's
show.
true.
And it would look and sound just like you. It would have all your inflections, your body language, everything. That is what I'm ultimately afraid of. And I believe that that's where we're moving towards as far as technology is concerned, but not where the space is concerned. I don't believe that the programs have been trained and that they're stealing us so that they can steal our likenesses and continue broadcasting on TNT or wherever they say, like, whatever. But I do believe that they are ready to replace us because they can study how each individual human being does that, put it into one giant database, and output an average. This is what an average news presenter podcaster is. And then we just get the generic average news presenter podcaster who's been modeled after all of us newscaster podcast presenters, etc. But it's an artificial intelligence fake person. There are networks that are already using these things, and I forget, I've reported about this on various programs on TNT. But yes, there are news channels right now that people are watching from their homes on their TVs in foreign countries, and the person that they're getting their news from on the TV screen is an artificially intelligence fake, deep fake.
Mhm.
And some of them look pretty real. It's amazing these days. So I think that that's where media is heading, meaning I believe that you and I, Johnny, before too long will ultimately become obsolete, sad
Mhm.
to say. So I'm doing everything in my power to stay, um, what's the opposite of obsolete? I forget that word. I have these little brain farts sometimes. You know the word I'm
Um,
thinking of. Relevant? There we go.
Wait a minute.
Relevant.
Oh, right.
I'm trying to
I was
stay
hoping to go with
relevant.
loads of other godlike.
Godlike.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it might all be a moot
Necessary.
point anyways, because they want to move us towards what universal basic income. They really see a future for some strange reason where we don't work. That's
Hmm.
real appealing to the person who doesn't want to work, but I've tried sitting around doing nothing.
Mm,
I'm no good at
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
hate it. It's probably the worst thing ever. So I'm not one of those people, number one. Number two, from what I understand about the way the world works, no pun intended, you very much do need some sort of work input, some sort of energy, because that's what work is by definition. Physics, mine now, because I'm very math and physics oriented too. It's another one of my things. I'm a very unique guy, Johnny. I'm
Hmm.
also mildly musical too. I can play piano by ear. Crazy.
Mildly musical. I like it. I like that as an expression. There's so much you're saying there that makes sense. But I've said to loads of people this idea that you'll have roomfuls of people who mostly bots, and you won't be able to tell whether or not they are in some rooms where it's just chat rooms full of bots that don't know that each other are bots. This is the idea, some people think that if they're bots, they'll understand that the other person's not is or isn't a bot, but the technology is advancing to the point where it's going to be indistinguishable from magic. And there's one thing that you said there that I've been developing a different idea on it or a different way to describe. I think we use the word, or we at least confuse the idea of replace when it's actually synthesize. I feel that like if you look at where technology's going, the replacing us is one thing, but you get to a point where those humans with power are like want to synthesize, and people like Barbara Marx Hubbard have already like worked out these processes and gone down the line. And it's the same when I hear about the Great Replacement. I see that as a great synthesis because they're moving in loads of people from other countries, and then if it was a replacement, then we would disappear. White people would suddenly disappear, and there would only be black people and Indian people, and so on and so on and forth, because they're not mixing. The first generations don't seem to commonly mix with outsiders, but the next generation do, and the two synthesize. So I don't think like I think that there's like we use replace when we should be actually seeing their agenda is about combining us, and that's the same with technologies, combining us with machines. So the AI will be inside our mind, and they've talked about this. I think I can't remember his name. Always, the moment I go to think about him, I forget his name. But he's talked a lot about this like little friend you'll have in your head that'll help you do
Is it
everything.
Ray Kurzweil?
No, no, it's one of the big AI tech bosses, but I just can't remember him. But it's irrelevant.
Definitely not Sam Altman.
No, no, it's one of but it just like the idea, and that this is regular. I can't remember what they call it, but you're like AI buddy, and most of the tasks that we do of communicating and doing other things that we do now, where we have to pick stuff up and we have to talk to people and we have to remember to do it and we forget to do it and whatever, those will be done by our little buddy who lives in our brain. And that buddy in our brain will know exactly what it needs to do because our brain will tell it, and it'll go and we'll no longer have the function generations down the line where we understand how to do the basic things, so that if those were controlled or taken away, or something was to happen to them, we would have like we would lose our reality very quickly. Our paradigm would shift and we wouldn't be able to cope. And that would be like perfect for a population crash. So I think there could be an element where we're being synthesized so that the plug can be pulled. And I know that's very conspiratorial of me. I do apologize. But yeah, I agree with you. Technology's advancing at a strange rate. But it's not all bad, is it? There's loads of I mean, this has been a good journey, hasn't it? The journey that you just described to me.
There's trade-offs. I've been thinking, I was just talking about how I can piano, right? I haven't messed around with an actual piano, real one, since I was like a kid, right? My grandfather, very talented on the organ. My father's pretty good on piano, and all those two, as well as myself, play by ear. So we're not like classically musically trained. My dad taught himself how to read music. My grandfather has never read a sheet of music in his life, and he played with the very first band that ever gave Frank Sinatra his first singing gig. The guy's talented, okay? He's very good. Oh yeah, there's an interesting story there. So I always recently I just bought a Casio keyboard. It's an electronic keyboard. I have it right to the right of me here, and I bought it because I wanted to try messing around with the piano again. I want to teach myself how to read music and actually play. And I've just been kind of tinkering with it, still doing what I do, which is where I just like play with it. So I was like, yeah, that's it. That sounds like that's that song. And then, and there's some that I've taught myself. Like I've tried to teach myself Beethoven's Fur-Elise. That's one of the ones that I'm working on. I absolutely love that song. I love playing it too. And I've played all of these songs that I've been tinkering with on my little synthetic keyboard here. I've played all of those before on real pianos at various stages. Um, Obviously, this is a synthesized piano. It's not a real piano, but on the actual piano tone, it sounds like a piano, right? And then it's got these other keys you can put on, like E piano 2, or synthesizer. And we all know what that synthesizer sound is. It's a very popular genre of music, stemming from the 80s and beyond, right? And all of those sounds just grate my nerves. I absolutely hate them. I hate all those synthetic sounding sounds. But here's where it gets interesting. The one that sounds like the piano actually bugs me more than the rest. And it's nothing wrong with the sound. There's something wrong with playing it on this keyboard. Because if you've ever played a real piano and you played a little electronic keyboard, they're not the same. You can feel what you're playing on a piano, and you've got foot pedal. I mean, it is a very much more a physical musical instrument than a lot of people realize. And you don't get that same feeling, experience, or even joy messing around with this little digital keyboard. At least that's what I've been experiencing so far. And so, yes, it's convenience. It's a trade-off because I can this is portable. I can put a strap on it. I can walk around the street and play this electronic keyboard if I wanted to.
That would be awesome.
For the Jeffrey Epstein
Ruckus
podcast, we'll do that.
Rooms.
But it's not the same. So there's a giant trade-off in some way, shape, or form. The person on the other end, when it's piped through like an audio and they're listening to it, they might not even be able to tell audibly that they came from an electronic keyboard or if it came from like a real keyboard with a microphone next to it. But the person who's playing it, the person who's creating the music, knows the difference. And I think that makes a difference. It's part of that human element about all of these types of things, Johnny.
Yeah. I just got Beethoven in my head now, but I got I can remember it's like the 7th or 8th or whatnot. It's no, 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 no. Oh man, that is such a good. I mean, Beethoven's just amazing. But you're right, the kickback you get from and the heavy feeling of a piano as well. When you push down, it feels heavy. It feels like you got to put in. When you get angry, you can get angry on it. You can see how, like, as piano probably developed and got more popular, that's where you get like Jelly Roll Morton and stuff kicking away at it and doing and the ragtime sort of era ensuing. It's just such a beautiful instrument. But in that sense, times change, don't they? I mean, the majority of kids nowadays will say they won't like playing on the piano. Like in the future, will say they don't like playing on the piano because it doesn't have that same level of ease that you have on the synth where they've learned. And then the next will be like have pianos in their brains going. I really mean that. I do think that's really what the future looks like. How positive are you about the future? Because I sound like a negative Nancy on occasion, but
it scares the crap out of me, dude. I definitely, I already fear change. It's one of my biggest problems. I think I've overcome that challenge in my life. It was a serious problem for me many, many times where I would literally hold myself back just because I didn't want to change. You know what I mean? So I've gotten much better about that. I embrace change. My life has certainly been a interesting series of seemingly unconnected events, and every time a door has slammed in my face, another one that I never saw coming opens up almost immediately. And I've learned to go with the flow and be like water, as you were discussing recently on your program. That really spoke to me. I'm like, yes, that's how we got to make it through this. Everybody be like water. And we definitely want to be like water because, if things get really bad and the Terminator robots do come, water will short circuit that and hopefully, and we'll survive. alive. But all kidding aside, I believe furthermore, where we're moving with this is more of a personalized experience. So I was joking about them stealing your likeness or mine and creating a new Johnny Venmore show or the Daily Ruckus, but it's artificial versions of us. I don't think they'll do that, but I do see a future where like people just are inside their own echo chamber, their own world with their own digital friends. I even saw and discussed there was a new AI friend you can wear as a necklace, and it's your friend, he's your buddy, and does everything for you, as you were talking about, but it's not in your head yet. But anyways, when we get to that point, you'll be able to ask your friend, what am I in the mood for today? Or your friend will probably ask you, hey, Billy, what would you like to do today? I think I would like to hear a podcast. What podcast would you like to hear? I would like to hear something about Bigfoot. Okay, who would you like to be your host today? I think I would like it to be Johnny Vedmore. And now you get a fresh, brand new, original, created just for you episode of the Johnny Vedmore Show all about Bigfoot. You see, I think that that's where we're headed with this stuff. And again, that frightens me in a way because where are you or I in any of that? We're not.
No. And will we ever, at that point, like the relative person that future folk wants to have read their auto-generated podcast on the subject, will that person even be a real person, or will they be the exact perfect tone, pitch, look, everything to comfort the person who's listening to them? It seems like
I read this short story. It's
Did
called
you?
Do Androids Dream of Electric
Oh
Sheep?
yeah, right. Okay, Philip K. Dick, isn't it? Dick's in it. I, the future does look a lot like this. It looks like we're heading towards something which is. How can we? How can we, everybody always comes to the point where how can we stop it? But how can we make it so that it doesn't taste so bad when we get there? I think is the only question.
Don't have the answer for that, Johnny.
Yeah,
I don't believe anyone does. Okay, listen. I do believe in the Bible, so I am a bit spiritual. I'm a bit biblical. I'm not the Christian Zionist Bible believer. Clearly, anyone who's heard me speak can tell that right away when it comes to certain issues. Plus, I'm open about that because I think it's a big problem facing our world today. But the thing is, like, no matter how you look at it, if you do believe in the Bible, none of this ultimately matters. And that at the end of the day, you can't stop whatever's going to happen, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. See, this is actually kind of related to my complaints with Christian Zionism, so I guess I will bring this up. What enables Christian Zionism to do some of the things that it does? I'm going to be very careful here because I'm by means no expert, but I know what I'm trying to say. Listen, the ends justify the means. So this concept, this idea that ultimately it's all in God's hands and that his plan is, according to what these people believe in the Bible, which is a misinterpretation of a lot of prophecies, there I said it, that nothing can stop what God has planned, so why even try? And that we as Christians should be alongside the state of Israel, yada, 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 okay? I don't want to get too, people probably understand Zionism. I don't need to explain that to them. Me, as an actual Bible-believing Christian, I believe that what Jesus Christ said, that no man, not even me, not even Jesus Christ, knows the time or the day of the second when it's all going to come to an end. So to pretend that you know this plan and what's going to happen and what that's going to look like just proves that you know nothing about the Bible, you have no faith, and you're not a Christian, okay? So I also believe, based on the teachings of the original church fathers and in the early writings of the the Acts of the Apostles and stuff, none of these people would have said, "Hey, we should all just roll over and die." Oh, yes, evil, corrupt world, evil, corrupt government. I guess there's nothing we can do. Woe is me. So we're not going to bother. No, we're still supposed to be, as Christians, going out there preaching a message, bringing people to Christ, being the salt of the earth. Nowhere in this state. We're going to keep doing that right up until the moment until bam, oh, Jesus is here again and it's God. Hey, all right, we're done. We don't have to worry about this anymore. Time for a new earth, a new heaven, new bodies, and all that fun, exciting things that we've been promised. So again, I believe that The future doesn't look very bright right now, and I don't believe that there's anything we can do to stop transhumanism or to stop where the world is headed with these globalist initiatives and the United Nations 2030 and the next pandemic and maybe blue beam fake alien invasion. I don't think there's anything you or I can stop that from happening, but there's a lot that you and I can do for ourselves personally to prepare for that moment. There's a lot that you and I can do to bring other people to a stage of being aware that when they see these things, they know how to personally react and take care of themselves on an individual basis, them, their family, their friends, their communities. And that needs to be constantly focused on and never lost sight of that prize, Johnny, because that is when the proverbial day ultimately win there.
Yeah, yeah, it is true enough. I was talking to a preacher on the street today. He's non-Trinitarian or something along those lines. So he was he wasn't the preacher was preaching. I was talking to the guy on the side of him, to the side of him, who was giving out the leaflets, the part of the message, one's parts gives out the written and the other gives out the verbal. And oh, it was a very strange conversation because he want he wanted desperately to know what I believed. And my belief is it starts off when I talk to Christians by saying we share nearly everything in common, like almost everything in common apart from biblical stuff, a lot of biblical stuff, naturally, morally, ethically, all of these things. I am complete and utterly with nearly every single religion on earth. Really, I'm down with good living a good life, being good to other people, loving thy neighbor, always thinking about other people first, trying to be the better man, even though I fail at that over and over again. And when I do, I feel bad, I feel shame, I feel the elements that you feel that you should have from a natural moral state. And that was partially given by my mum and dad more than it was by religious doctrine. But I learned what Christianity wanted, and I was like, I've always been like, well, that's what I give anyway. So I don't understand why I need the rest of it, because I share that belief. I share belief that there's something that's bigger. There was a start to this. I was talking to Joe Allen of the War Room on the phone. We were having a conversation where I described him what ultimately I think is the most likely possibility for what the universe is. And he ended up saying, well, that's quite Gnostic. And I was like, is it? Am I both like religious and like sort of like also kind of to an extent nihilistic with my views of where it all come from, or like detached from it? Because I don't think I am. But I was talking to this guy today and he was saying that he was saying that government mandate is the word of God as well, because Romans says you've got to follow everything the government says. And I was explaining to him, okay, so you're saying Hitler was, base level, Hitler was acting on God for God then. And it was, oh no, 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 because he wasn't a government. I was like, well, Hitler definitely did have a government, and they definitely did introduce policies, and they had massive like they fought out what they were doing with the country. They governed, whether we like it or not, or how they governed. But there is an element where that book, where it's got lines like that in, where we should be obeying the government because the government represents God. That's nuts. That means that, of course, the most and what I find a lot very hard with Christianity, and again, this kind of like touches or has shares part of the Venn diagram crossover with like Christian Zionism as well, is that idea that we're we're all perfect while saying that we're going to come to an end where we're all a disgrace as well. That oh no, you should follow the government because the government's right. Okay, but you know that the prophecy says it's all going to go to shit, and it's going to be the leaders that take you there, and they're all going to sell out to the devil and all this. So, at what point does the government not become good if you're always going to say it is like this? There was an Old Testament, there was a New Testament, and there's something in the future. Is what like my feeling is on all of that, and people don't. I talk to people about like the idea of Jesus. Most people's idea of Jesus is that he's going to come back and forgive everybody. That's not what the scripture says. It says he's going to come back, he's going to kick everybody's ass, and he's going to be like, bringing down fire and brimstone upon thee. So in that case, then you've got to be thinking, oh, wait a minute. Oh, right. I'm going to have to fight my ass off in the future if that is so. So even Christians have this like they keep the original Jesus as what they're expecting to see when they come when he supposedly comes back. Now again, I'm not like trapped into sort of biblical idea of it. I'm much more into like the spiritual. I think the awareness of like you could say a Christ consciousness, an idea of what is to be human and why that is so important, will envelop us all as we get up to a certain state or level of consciousness, and we won't be able to stop it. It's a natural. It's when the mind is developed in such a way that everything opens up to realize how special everything is. I hope that time comes, and I see it much more like that. But it's very interesting. Do you think all governments represent God?
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, that's one of those many instances where you can take lines from the Bible out of context and apply it to things today and make it serve your agenda. And that's not what it's about. That's not what the true faith is about. That's not what the Bible was about. That was never its intention. Yes, obviously, clearly, historically speaking, biblically speaking, there were certain leaders back in the day that were literally ordained by God, but we are so far beyond that point. How do I know? Oh, that's right, because it wasn't very long in human history, Johnny, even in biblical times, where government sought to replace God. And that's a problem. If your government is trying to replace God, and I'm God, would I tell you, yes, obey this government that just replaced me?
Hmm.
I'm gonna guess that's what's called a fallacy, Johnny. Is that the correct term? Yeah.
Yes,
See,
yes.
I mean, I hate to say it like that, but I mean, it's just when you look at these things, like most quote unquote Christians are just people who go to church who are being preached to by a quote unquote preacher who was preached to and trained in a seminary school. And if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? That's a direct quote from the Bible. So yes, there is a reason why most Christians have absolutely no idea what Christianity means, don't know what the word Israel means in the Bible, and therefore are so willy-nilly applying it to this area of land in the Middle East and causing all sorts of havoc. Anyways, we're not going to get into that right now. I don't want to get depressed because it continues on. The band marches on, Johnny. Um,
Mhm.
this is where it gets weird because we were just talking about where the technology is moving. I'm getting goosebumps now. Christianity, true spirituality, spiritually speaking, the belief of Christianity, the practice of Christianity, 99% of that is personal within one giant solo echo chamber. Very similar to where I was suggesting that this intelligence, this artificial intelligence technology is heading. And now this all makes perfect sense because more than anything, what these technocrats really ultimately want to do is they want to replace God with technology. So I guess we've moved past the phase of replacing God with government, and now he's about to be replaced with technology. It all makes sense now. But yeah, so I find that personally, what I think that spiritually speaking, Christianity is supposed to be a very much more personal, enclosed experience, but then it's one that you have so much joy with your personal experience with God, you want others to have the same. And that is what you go out and you proselytize. And then I also believe, because part of our belief is, yes, we get together wherever two or three are gathered in my name, there I am. So that's why we do the church thing, or at least we used to back in the day, is because there is a spiritual, physical, energetic power when a group of human beings get together in the same space and are all on the same positive vibe. So in this
Mhm.
case, prayer. So I believe there is great power in corporate prayer. is what that's called when people are together. So even if a bunch of them don't understand what they're doing, just the fact that they were in the same room together singing love songs to God is very powerful and uplifting. And Satan, the devil, the evil people, they hate that. You'll notice that right away after the pandemic started, they had a real trouble with those people going to church, and they said, you can't go to church. Oh, but it's okay if you want to go to the bar, you want to go to the strip club, you want to go to McDonald's, you want to go to your restaurant and do the mask, sit down, stand up, go to the restaurant. That's fine, but no church for you. Why? Why is it so bad that we can't go to church? So much so that we were arresting preachers. Why? Very strange.
Yeah, no.
Also, of course, the same thing with barbershops. So maybe, hanging out and getting your hair cut is just as powerful.
Yeah, well, the top of the head is a route to the God. I have to say that it's clear that for me, I was running away from religion. I mean, I don't know. We'll find out about you now. But like I was running away from a lot of religion for years. I had like up until I was 11 years old, I was very much every Sunday, Sunday school, extra church things going on all the time. We had a very we had an old fashioned like it was a pretty poor Welsh church which was corrugated iron. Everything was corrugated iron roof, corrugated iron sides. Everything was like eventually it was knocked down and they built a brick one nearby and then sold off all of the land that was for playing fields for the families and the children that don't go to church anymore. They sold off to housing, and that was something that we saw around. Back when it was a corrugated shack, it was full up. And when they turned it into a brick building, it's now not got so many people in. And I think there's a point where the people forgot what they were and why churches were good, and I did because I really wanted. I didn't want to be in the church. I had my own feeling of, like I say, good and evil and stuff like that, and I kind of ran away from it. And it was only recently, over the past 3-4 years, where I've done people's podcasts and they've been really strong Christians, and I've been like, oh yeah, we see eye to eye on everything, absolutely everything. The state of the world has gone so far that the only thing is to fight against evil, and it's a very classic looking evil. It's a very classic evil. It's using the same game, same tricks, whispers in your ear, and you believe it if you so do choose to. And everybody's falling for it. Everybody's in with the devil right now, and they don't even know it. Even us, we indulge in this and we indulge in that, and it's hard to see how it's not going to lead to somewhere worse. But I really like. I feel that there's a new. Oh, that's a dangerous thing to say. There's like a new covenant coming. There's a new something. There's a new agreement coming. There's a new something coming because people have to come to the point where they realize that you've got to fight against it all. So where did you start off with religion? What was your family like when it come down to religion?
When I was a wee lad, so before my parents got divorced, which would have happened when I was 10 years old, it was just the occasionally go to church, usually for holidays. And when I went to church, it was Sunday school for me and the kid, the sister, me and my sister. So because we were just kids, and it was a Presbyterian, just a watered down, boring. You just go, you hear the sermon, you sing the songs. It's in one of those very stuffy, sit up straight chair seats, the pews, and they pass along the collection plate. We would go, they would do the communion with the bread and the little grape juice pretending to be wine. Meant absolutely nothing to me when I was a kid. After my parents got divorced, so as early as when I was 8 years old, my mom and my father started sending me and my sister to a summer camp that was Christian themed. Unbeknownst to them, it was more of a Baptist born again Christian organization. But anyways, so that you probably already get the idea. So we've been going to the summer program for many years. And even after my parents got divorced, which again was when I was 10. And when I was 12 years old, attending this Christian themed summer camp, something happened different than happened all the previous years, because when you turn 12 years old, you get a slightly different message, apparently. So they took us to a tent revival service, and I got the
Mm.
full blown. You're going straight to hell if you don't.
Oh,
You know
balls.
the yeah.
Oh,
I got
shit,
the
no.
full frontal in the bawling, crying on the ground, rolling, dancing, grateful for being saved because I didn't want to go to hell. All that thing. Ran home. Saved my sister, saved my mom, saved my stepfather, or at least so I thought. My stepfather was faking it. But anyways, so it was me. I brought that to my family. My father and my stepmother wanted nothing to do with it. They are hardcore. They're very new age people. They're very pagan in their beliefs. And my dad is a Freemason. There, I said it. So it's been
Mm.
tricky with them in that department. But my mom and my stepdad, my sister, very were receptive to it. And we went to a church that was a Southern Baptist church. I don't know how my parents found this church. So I was attending a church where we were dancing and jumping and going down the aisles and everything. It was a great, good old time, man. It was fun. I mean, it was a blast. It really was. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, I was brought to all of that the first time the wrong way.
Yeah.
That is a horrible way to do it. I eventually did lose my faith. I backslid for many years of my life. I dabbled with Wiccan and various magics and even thought I wanted to be a Satanist. I studied Luciferianism. I got into some weird shit, I'm not going to lie. So that's how I already knew about some of this thing before I was Ruckus. Um,
But you have
so
to
that's what
go through
happened.
all of that, don't you? You have to go
Yeah,
through
I
all
think
of that,
so. Yeah.
yeah, because I completely understand. I looked at everything. I studied every little bit of this, and I have to admit that I bought the Necronomicon when I was about
Whoa.
16, 17 from a secondhand bookshop, and I had been a big fan of The Evil Dead. I mean, it was one of my favorite movies of all time, so I thought I saw it and I was like, oh man, I was into
There are
metal,
some
punk.
real dangers
Oh
with
yeah,
some of
so
those
I
grimoires,
I
100%.
I took it home and I couldn't even open it. I was just
Thank
like,
God.
the thought of even reading it was just like something completely. I'm not going to blame it, like say it's a godly urge or something along those lines. It was complete fear of entering into a pact that I could never get out of. And that has been a fear throughout my life. I think that might be the natural urge to do the right thing rather than the wrong thing, is that, wait, I don't want to sell myself over to something. It's what the most religious scriptures are trying to tell you, is don't sign yourself over to evil and follow that path. It's always a path, and a path isn't just one step, is it? A path is many steps that go down the line. So don't sell yourself over to walking down a path that you can't come back from. It's always been something that was instilled inside me. And I ended up giving it to a friend of mine, Michael, in school, because he was a wild. I was best friends with his brother, and he was a wild, cross-dressing witch, Satan, on the edge of Satanism for a little bit, and then off, dabbling in loads of things. And I wasn't interested in it, but I knew he'd love it. But it was a completely. Around the same time, I also had the Toronto Blessing, which is like yeah, I went to one of those things because I was told to by my friend. He said, come to this church. It's a church just around the corner from me, like the what's it called? Oh God, it's just around the corner from my house, and I can't remember what it is. It's so terrible. All Nations Center. And he said to me, we were about 16, 17. It was around this time, and he was like, come to this thing with me. There's going to be this American stuff going on. And we went, and it was just like it was mad. It was mad. There was people everywhere rolling around on the floor, some like rocking backwards and forth, people cackling all over the place. They do what is essentially some form of hypnotic thing, and then you fall down and your body reacts in a certain way, whatever. Me and my mate lay on the floor for about 15 minutes and felt paralyzed, but also I felt that it was a mental thing. Like it was something that I was indulging in to an extent. And that was like something where I was like, oh, that's interesting. But those are the steps that we take to explore the things we're not meant to explore and see if those things we actually want to explore. Because my mum was extremely spiritual, went to a spiritualist church. She gave up doing the tarot because one of her friends committed suicide shortly after she gave her what she deemed as a negative reading. They always went to what we called the spooky church, which was, the psychic church where they'd uh, have some different person who's gonna tell you about stuff. But I always kept distant from it all. Never, I always felt like I knew what I was and knew where I was. Have you ever? So you said a lot there as well, though. You said a lot there. There's a load of stuff there. I mean, yeah,
I do that sometimes.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. No, no, I'm thinking about, your whole that relationship with parents and spirituality. I mean, you converted people in your family or saved them. Seems like something that would be impossible for me to have done. How was it just that experience that led you to do that?
I guess, yeah. It meant something to me. I was very emotional, and it certainly impacted my mother, and I think maybe my stepmother. I mean, my stepfather went along with it because it was my mom. My stepfather actually thoroughly enjoyed his time in church because it made him somebody. He became a somebody. He was popular. He wasn't very well liked in real life outside of that, so he latched onto that, and so he was a great big faker kind of guy, and at home, he was just a giant D-bag doing horrible things. So we all know what that's like.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
want to get into that. So yeah, I don't know. But you mentioned you were running away from religion. This is the biggest problem. I think religion was probably invented just to get everybody away from God as much as possible, which is ironic because it's all in the name of God. I mean, if I were Satan, if I were the devil, oh man, you're a fan of Paul Harvey? You know the
I
radio.
don't know. No, 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 no. I don't.
Oh, you see, I'm gonna have to send you this. This is a classic American thing. He was a radio announcer guy. He would report like not necessarily the news, but like interesting stories, and it would be like a big I don't know how long, maybe 5 minute long monologue story, and he just his voice and his cadence. He would tell the story, and then he would finish it up, and then he would say, "I'm Paul Harvey. Good day." Well, one time on his classic radio broadcast, he did something called "If I Were the Devil." And you may have heard it. I will find it for you. I can't paraphrase it. I won't even try. But it was something to the effect of where he was saying, if I were the devil, and he listed a bunch of things that he would do if he was the devil. But the things that he was listing were all of the things that were happening in real life, in society, in culture, in governments around, in America, because it was just very powerful the way he said it. Because then by the time it's done, you're like, wow. I guess, yeah, if I were the devil, I'd probably be a very happy guy right now. Things are looking good. It's all going according to plan, as it were. But many, many, many YouTubers have taken that and put it up there. You've probably seen this speech before and not realized it. But Paul Harvey, if I were the
Mhm.
devil, I encourage you to check it out.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really interesting flip. I felt, I've always seen that's one of my problems with religion. I've always seen that, well, like the guy was saying today, oh, the government is a representation of God, so you have to follow the government. Well, the religion is anything that's humans are meant to think are a representation of God would be the first thing people would conspire to control if they want to control people, because and that religion is that um prominent or dominant. And it doesn't have to be actually that prominent. You don't have to go to church all of the time to be affected by that the direction that it pushes you in. You just need to have a little bit of that underpinning your own morals and your own ethics to lead you into a certain direction. But what do you think they're gonna really make an attempt within the next decade to combine the free world, like main world religions?
Well, that's the big theory, anyways. Isn't that what they say? That we're gonna have one world government, one
They
world
even have it
religion?
on, yeah, they even have it on the
Yeah.
World Economic Forum training
Yeah.
plan. Like it's,
I, I've thought about this many times, obviously, because, we talked about Alex Jones briefly there back in the day. And as a Christian, and when I was going to the Baptist church, they definitely did preach about that stuff. They say this is how you're going to know the end times are coming. We're all keeping an eye out for this type of a thing, a one world religion kind of scenario, because of the mark of the beast system and all these weird things that I don't necessarily 100% believe in anymore, as the way I was taught when I was younger. But that's neither here nor there. The thing is, the reason I brought up if I were the devil is if I were the devil, the very first institution I would get my claws in would be religion, churches, right out of the gate. So I think that explains a lot. We hear these terms, synagogue of Satan. A lot of people like to associate that with Israel or various people who have a particular faith. I'm not being anti-Semitic. I'm just stating facts here, what some people believe, not me. I believe the synagogue of Satan is good old the Western culture, the Western world, the United States of America, the UK, places like that, because we run around and act like as though we're, oh, well, this is a Christian nation. No, we're not. We're not a Christian. There's no such thing. There is no national religion in the United States of America, and that's one of the things that makes it great. It's right there in our Constitution that government shall not pass any law thereof, et cetera, et cetera. The separation of church and state, which so many people get wrong, that just means that my country is never going to say you have to worship this way, which gives you the freedom as an individual person to worship any way you want to, presuming, of course, that your worship doesn't involve, I don't know, I guess eating cats.
Right. Well, basically, we were in the same area there, to be honest. Machete-wielding cat eaters not welcome. That's the religion we want to keep away from.
But the thing is, like, yes, so I don't know. I forgot your original question, Johnny. That's another thing I do, especially after 2 hours.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I understand that. I mean, talking about all of these things, especially when it comes down to religion, causes like, people to, we were talking about like the one
Oh, you were
world
asking,
religion.
I forgot. Yeah, if we're going to head that way. Okay. So I have a new theory about this. I believe that we're already there. I believe that the one world religion is one that the vast majority of people already believe. You're going to hate me for saying this, Johnny. And it's actually pretty much what.
No. Wait a minute. Let me put on my hate hat. Oh, I haven't got it with me. Come on then.
I
Just
should have
say it
said in
and
the
I'll
beginning,
put on
the
my
one
hate
thing we
hat
shouldn't
later.
talk about is religion, because we're probably going to get into it.
Go on, let's
Is
do
what
it.
you just said, your personal belief system that you just laid out right there. I believe that that is the one world religion that is warned about.
Yeah.
This concept, and it's what right out of the gate,
I've
the
been
very
thinking about
first
this
Bible
recently.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so hold on to your butt. Ready? So right out of the gate, you look at the Garden of Eden story, right? And the serpent and the Eve and the apple, forbidden knowledge, and all that stuff. One thing that the serpent, that wasn't Satan, by the way. That's another thing people are confused about. The serpent was a separate creature who was worked upon by Satan, and then the serpent, on behalf of Satan, worked upon Eve, who then worked on Adam, and here we are. Okay, that's how all that works. So the serpent was convincing Eve to eat the
Spreading
apple, and he said
misinformation. Yeah.
he
Go
said
on.
yes, and he said that the reason we were told not to eat of this fruit and why it was forbidden is because that God knows that as soon as we do that, we shall become like gods. And you've probably heard this brought up many, 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 many times before. However, here's the other part of this. The other part of this is the fact we're talking about one world religion. There is no God. There is no religion. Oh yeah, that you are your own God. A lot of people. I think see. I'm losing my track of thought. That's what that means. It doesn't mean that you are going to be like God. That just means that what does it mean to be God other than a creator? Okay, God has ultimate control over and ownership over our souls because he has set forth moral guidelines. That is not something naturally within us as creatures here on this in this existence. Animals that have the same composure as us in the cellular level, blood, breathe oxygen, whatever, you know what I'm saying, right? They don't have this same concept of good and evil, this idea of morality. There is clearly something about human beings that sets us apart from all other living things that we share a space with in this existence that we call Earth. So for us to be like God, yes, that could mean, okay, we can create things. Well, obviously, God created us with a mind, hearts, and hands. We create things. That's not what that means. We could be like God by trying to replace God, but with a different form of God, say the governments or the AI. Or maybe we could just say we don't need God because we are God. We don't need to be saved. We don't need this salvation. We don't need to worry about what's good or evil. because now that the knowledge of good and evil, now that we know the difference between the two, we can make the decision for ourselves which one of those paths we are going to choose. And I think by doing that, that is being like God, and that is one world religion line of thinking. I think basically, ultimately, as soon as the real God is out of the picture and everyone just does what they do, what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Ooh. Yeah, but
Anyways,
that means the taking of whichever path you do so choose, rather than the path that leads to good and God. I mean, good and God are kind of like wrapped up in the same way that sexuality and gender are. They're separate things that we make like interchangeable, but they not necessarily, of course, the same thing. They're very different things. Uh, and I really, really do resonate with that, because the conversation I was having today about that, about government, when he was asking me about, I was saying myself that I have a knowledge of what good and evil is. And because I have that knowledge, that I can go in that direction. But I also know that, that snake speaking in your ear is giving you a lot of that knowledge. And so you constantly throughout my life, I've discovered that my previous paradigm has been erroneous in many different ways, that I have chosen to be in a situation where it's like, this is wrong, 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 but it's my current situation. So it seems true and right and the only path that I can walk. But yeah, I agree with you that there's an element of that where if you were to look at relationships with God as being whether you have decision or not have the decision to choose, that is a big thing. To give you, what does then that mean? Because I don't think, I think if you follow that down, isn't it hard to even be a human being with that in on your back? Doesn't it turn into the extreme?
this is the eternal thing, Johnny, and this is why it's so personal for each one of us on the individual level. Because yes, when you think about it, what you just said, yet God, that was the biggest gift and the biggest, and like, wow, I wish we could have given that one right back, is the gift of free will.
It's
And
done.
that's
It's
what's
done,
gotten us in
man.
trouble.
Yeah, it's done
He
now.
gave us the free will.
We can't give back the free will now, though, can we?
And
So
then
I
and then it gets even, this is where it gets even harder as a believer. This is the one that I struggle with. It's like, okay, not only did he give me the free will to choose the path that I'm on, he already knew what I was going to choose and how my path ends. And that just, I can't, I just, those are the types of things that just, yeah, again, you have to handle on an individual level. But
yeah.
when some of us get there and we have these huge, huge moments, epiphanies, I hope mine comes sooner than later. That's all I gotta say.
Angry baby clenching fist meme seems to be my thought at that moment, I have to say. All right, well, we're coming up to the end here, and everybody's obviously enjoyed listening to this journey through time and space. And you are getting on with something. You're getting back on the daily ruckus. What is the plans ahead? What are you planning on doing, Adam?
Well, my plan is that I'm gonna do it because more than anything, like most of the things that we do, you just have to get into it. You just got to do it. You got to jump in, get your hands dirty, get your feet wet, and all the rest will follow. It very much is a work thing. You got to stay motivated and on top of it. So again, I was saying I'm excited about doing it. I got bit by the creative bug again, so I've got something that should be out sometime this week, maybe even two things this week. I'm not sure exactly when, so keep an eye out for that. But the plan is, Johnny, crossing my fingers. We'll call this Plan A. Next Monday, what is that? September 30th. That would be the last day of the month. Would be the first official episode of brand new episodes of the Daily Ruckus, now in Ruckus Vision. is what I'm calling it. So, and it's
What's
got a
it?
little trademark next to it, so you can't take that.
Uh,
So it's Ruckus Vision trademark. There you go.
okay, I promise I won't steal Ruckus Vision trademark. So you'll be looking to do a daily show eventually, though, I
Yep.
take it.
Oh,
Yeah.
and where that will be, I'd probably be more important. So I'm still working out the kinks, but it's going to be all through alternate current radio. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be uploading a video version of it directly to my X account, and or it might be streaming live to my X account. We're not sure about that yet. But in the meantime, once I do it, when it's made available, you'll find it on all the platforms through alternate current radio. So go to the website, alternatecurrentradio.com, and you'll find it there also through their Spreaker, their Spotify, their YouTube, their Odyssey, their Rumble, their Rockfin, maybe even Hector's own personal X account. You're going to see the Daily Ruckus every day, Monday through Friday, starting next Monday. And
Whoa.
exactly what that looks like, well, just a few days ago, I had no idea, but now I know. And all I got to say is stay tuned. I think you're going to like it.
Awesome. I think this is part of it, isn't it? Is that we've all had like masses of experience over the past few years. Yes, decades gone by. I mean, I've been dabbling in video editing, music, audio editing, stuff like that since I've been 13, 14 years old. So like it's not a surprise that I'm still doing that, and I'm sure you're the same. And it just like skills develop, but the technology gets better. It makes us easier to do more stuff. And I'm looking forward to it, Ruckus. I hope I can be a part of it here and there. I hope that when you have a space for me to come on and do something, I'll be happy to accept that. That's for sure. And you've
Well,
go on.
because I was going to say, because the format is a little different than what some people are expecting. But that's okay because I am a man of many talents. So I intend on expanding my offerings outside of the traditional Daily Ruckus. And I don't know what I might call it. I have done episodes of the Daily Ruckus that are special. There's one in particular I used to do one every week. It was called Open Mic Night. So I would do an episode of the Daily Ruckus, but instead of me covering the news, I would cover one piece, one article, one essay, one speech from one individual, and I would read it. So it was as if I gave them the mic, but they're speaking through me,
Yeah,
if that
yeah,
makes
yeah.
sense. It was a unique thing. So maybe one day you might be on the Daily Ruckus, but it's not really you. Maybe I'll read something that you have written. Also, I am going to start a separate program, an interview series. I want to do what you do. You guys have all inspired me. There's lots of people I would love to sit down and have a chat with. And since I'm a different kind of guy, the type of people I want to sit down and have a conversation like you and I just did with are not famous people. I would like to find a normal person who does something that I'm impressed with, somebody who exhibits what I might describe as being a bit of a ruckus and causing a ruckus. And I'm pretty sure the program will be called The Ruckus Among Us. And
Mm.
so that is an ambitious plan of mine sometime soon. But in the meantime, I'm going to stay focused on the daily ruckus, which is usually just me and the camera. And you find people now watching me on camera. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, but I think it was always heading that way, wasn't it? Wasn't it? Well, okay. Thanks for coming on the News Pace podcast. And it's awesome. It's awesome to have met you. It's awesome to be on a journey where our paths collided. I hope our paths collide over and over again in the future. And good luck with everything you're doing. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Like keep me in touch, involved if possible. I don't mind, if you've got a quirky format, I don't mind adapting to a quirky format. I can be a bit of a quirky individual here and there. So if you do need a special weird 15 seconds here or 15 seconds there, I'm willing to wait around for such things as well. So,
I like that. I'll tell you what, I'll have my people call your people. Oh, wait a minute.
You
What
are
does that
my
mean?
people. Yeah, you've got one hell of a address book by now as well. So, I mean, I'm sure you can probably get some real corkers to get involved with your stuff. And
Real
that's
quick, you
awesome.
want a quick side note for you and everybody because it's kind of funny and it's a true story. Because these things happen. It's been about a month now since I was no longer officially employed with TNT and as your or anybody's producer booking guests. And just a couple days ago, I got a reply from an email that I had sent months ago asking somebody to come on your show. And they finally said yes, that they would love to. Well, I got some bad news for them. I haven't written them back yet, but I was thinking of just putting them in touch with you in person, Johnny.
Do
So,
it. But produce for that one last
yeah.
time. The one last
Yeah.
production, my friend. One last
It's like
production.
too late, buddy. Sorry. Yeah, just kidding. Yeah, true story. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to get these guests. That's all I'll say.
Well, let's continue headlong into the breach, dear friend. Let's just go forward, and that involves being adaptable. Who knows what's going to come in the future? Be like water. Ruckus, I love you. Good luck with everything, my friend.
I love you too, Johnny. Good luck with you with everything as well. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure.
Shaping a great reset for the post-corona era.